So, so before we get going here, I want to remind everyone that Friday morning in the park, 9 to 12, I'm leading the plein air group. All right. So it's going to be really spectacular.
I'm taking the day off.
Oh, oh,
I,
Andrea.
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Um, it's going to be spectacular just because we're all going to be there painting. So I hope we have good weather and I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, so I assume you got who saw this movie? Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Who saw this movie?
Nope.
Oh, come on. Really? You know Mr. Bean, don't you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you got to watch this one because it's really really funny because he was a janitor at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington D.C. and he spilled some kind of cleaning fluid on the Whistler's mother painting. And then he tried before they found out he tried to fix it. This is what he did. Okay. All right. So I want to just go through this is not going to be long, but it is a history of portrait painting thrown together sort of ad hoc by me. And these go back. How old do you think these are? These are 32,000 years old.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, it's actually one piece from two views.
Mhm.
2 inches high. It says where they're from, but I don't know. I can't even pronounce it, but somewhere in Europe. And so it's a portrait, and it's the experts believe that it's a portrait, not just a head. There's a big difference. Portrait painting is of somebody, so it has to bear some likeness of the subject. And they think they have reasons why they think it is of somebody, and I can't remember what they are right now, but it is an important distinction. Not every painting we do of a person's head is appropriately called a portrait.
Charles, is this pottery or carved or?
It's carved from some kind of bone,
Yeah.
Okay.
2 inches high.
Mhm.
And then moving ahead, you've probably seen this, a famous Roman Egyptian funeral portrait from about first century AD, 14 by 8 inches, and it would be in encaustic. Does everybody know what
Really?
encaustic is?
Yeah.
All right, painting in melted wax. And it
Mhm.
was popular at the time because it was pretty much impervious to water, not heat, but water. So it's just it's just a beautiful portrait. Um, we don't know who, I don't think we know who she is, but they would often paint these on the the tomb or the casket that they put people in.
Mhm.
Do you
And
know, did
jumping
that
ahead,
have
what?
did that have gold leaf or anything or something like that for to represent the gold?
No, this does not have any gold leaf on it. So it's kind of interesting how realism came and went in painting and
Mhm.
sculpture,
Yeah.
like around this time, and then it came back again with the Renaissance. Very interesting to think about historically in terms of progress. We think artists are better if they're realistic, but historically, it's not been understood that way. But I want to show you, jumping ahead now to 1548, this self-portrait by a woman, Katharina van Hermessen. Um, and I just think it's a cool portrait from 1548. So we're into the Renaissance now, and this would have been in Northern Europe. Um, but I like to what I find is that I'm discovering that there really were a lot of women painters in our history, in the history of the West. And you might argue that they did not get the attention they deserved. Okay, but they were out there painting and doing really serious work, so they had to learn it somehow. And it's surprising how many I keep coming across.
So it's interesting how many familiar things there are to us as artists. You know, the maul stick, the brushes, the palette,
Yeah,
easel.
Yeah.
but
kind of
she's painting on some background that's already framed. That's kind of unusual.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I was wondering about that.
so all those tools will probably establish her as a painter, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's her trade.
Hmm. That's quite a tiny little palette she has.
Yeah.
Um,
Is she painting a portrait of herself in the painting?
I don't know.
Looks like
Well,
it.
oh yeah, she is. It is called self-portrait. You're right. So she would be looking into the mirror. Um, I don't know why they decided to not just sign the painting the way that she did, but write some kind of message. I have no idea. Probably Latin. Um, it does say you can read the date in there. But going ahead again about 100 years now, you'll never guess who this is. It's King Charles of England. No, no, not that one. Well, I'll show you that one later. But there was a King Charles first in 1636, and it's a sculpted bust of him.
Mhm.
And the problem is that the sculptor didn't know what he looked like. That's, that's and I can't remember the story very clearly now that I'm talking about it. But what they did, all right, the king was in England and the sculptor was in the Netherlands, so they had a great Netherlandish painter, Sir Anthony Van Dyck, did this triple portrait of Charles the First
Hmm.
and sent it to the sculptor so he could base this, he could get a likeness of the sculpture from the painting.
Very cool.
Isn't that cool? I know I butchered this, but um, and Sir Anthony Van Dyck was just a great painter, portrait painter, especially in the 1600s. And but this is the same person represented three times. I have seen this painting a million times. I never knew the story behind it.
I wonder how long the king had to sit to be painted
Well, that's
every time.
another really interesting question. We're going to get into that in just a minute. Um, and of course, who the great portrait painter, considered the great portrait painter of just about all time, is who?
Rembrandt.
Yes. And I
Who did you say?
Rembrandt.
Yeah, I thought it was a Rembrandt, but I
Yeah.
didn't hear
And I just love that feather. I'm going to have to get one of those.
that.
That would look good with the baseball cap.
Yeah, right.
You can ignore the collar though.
The collars, I don't know why they wore metal collars. That seems kind of almost kinky. I don't know. Okay, I got one more Rembrandt, and I put this one in. There's a million Rembrandt portraits, great paintings, but I put this in because he was known to be an artist who was very introspective. I mean, he could look into a person and really bring something out about the human spirit, a kind of humanity that we just don't find in a lot of portrait painting. I'm going to show you some of those later. A famous American portrait painter that you'll see the difference. So just keep this portrait in your mind. He not only captured him laughing with his teeth, which is extremely difficult to do, but he just feels like a person, like he could be your uncle or something. It has that kind of warmth and humanity. And another painter that I've really been influenced a lot was Velázquez. And he had that same ability, the Spanish painter Diego Velázquez. This is from 1660. And this is called Portrait. This is called Portrait of Sebastian de Mora. He was one of the king had like court jesters and entertainers. Often they were dwarfs. And you might think, well, he's just exploiting these people for their because they're comical and he thought they were funny, and maybe he was, but I really think that's why Velasquez painted him because he wanted to see him as a human being. And I get that feeling just like I do with the Rembrandts, that he was really looking into the soul of this dwarf. Now, because I think Velázquez is such a great painter, I'm going to show you one more. This is the one we have at the DIA. And you might not think much of it, but every time I go to the DIA, I make a beeline for this to look at this portrait. The color is much more subtle in real life. A beautiful chance to study glazing in portrait painting. Here in this particular portrait. And I don't know who the guy was, just one of the king's court, part of the court, and he got his portrait painted. And I just love this painting. A couple more great ones I know you'll love a little bit later from 1930s. Edmund Tarbell was the portrait painter. You've probably seen his work. And this is his wife, Mrs. Edmund Tarbell. Beautiful light, beautiful handling of paint. He just was like right up there with Sargent and Sorolla. Okay, Edmund Tarbell. And this one, again, is by Tarbell, Edmund Tarbell. And I chose this because it is a portrait of Henry Clay and Helen Frick. They were Henry and Helen Clay Frick, the famous art collectors who had the mansion in Manhattan. It's now a museum, and my daughter works there. And again, just beautiful paint handling, and not a conventional portrait either. They're kind of treated with a little more thoughtfulness than, for instance, now here we go. This is going to be a series of paintings by Nelson Shanks. Has anyone heard of him? This is, have you, Patrick? This is one of his self-portraits. Now, I told you, I think in the email, I told you how you could make a lot of money painting portraits.
You said
Nobody
that.
saw that. Okay. I know I put it in there.
No, I saw that. What's the?
Oh, all right. Okay. It was facetious, but I mean, this is a self-portrait. To me, this is just, I don't know what the word is. Can anyone think of a word other than pretentious and full of yourself?
It looks like a meme a lot.
Like a what?
Like a meme.
Like a meme, yeah. If a self-portraiture could have memes, this would be one. I'm sure he was a nice guy, and he did pass away a few years ago, so I don't want to go too hard on him. But I just think that there's a world of difference between him and some of the others that we have looked at here. And I want to show you a few more because he just made a fortune. He had this great big barn in Pennsylvania, a huge studio, and he painted the presidents, a lot of our presidents. I've never seen the. Who is this? It kind of looks familiar. Some people wouldn't remember. Della probably.
Tommy Ray Gun.
Are you still there, Della? No. All right.
Yeah,
Well.
here,
Oh.
but I didn't know who this was. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. He was Ronald Reagan, our former.
Trickle-down economics.
Former actor.
Yeah. How did I do that? All right. He painted Bill Clinton. Now, people did sit for him. I don't know if they sat for all of them. But he painted Bill Clinton, the study, you would call it. And this doesn't alienate me as a study, but it still feels like commercial art. And also did the official, every president gets 2 official portraits. And Nelson Shank painted Clinton here in this one, full length. And we're talking probably like $250,000 for these that the artist would get paid. And there is a secret nod, if you'd call it that, to none other than Monica Lewinsky. Can anyone identify it? I'm sure he didn't want Clinton to be able to recognize it.
Color of the rug.
That's a good guess. That could very well could be it. Part
the
of
newspaper he told it.
The what?
Is her article in the news article about her in the newspaper he's holding?
No, that's another good one. But I don't even know if I believe this, but from what I read, it's the shape of the vase on the left is supposed to look like the blue dress.
Okay.
I know, it's just um I'm glad we have someone here this was all before her time. Okay, and then he painted Princess Diana. Similar feel to the verticality of the portrait, but he painted Princess Diana, and he also painted the Queen. But I think I might have gotten these. Yeah, well, he painted the Queen in an alla prima painting, which I generally just don't like this kind of painting or portrait painting, but I do like this one because it's very direct and alla prima, and here she is sitting for him. Now,
So
how
now this
long-
is Lucian Freud, correct?
he what?
This is Lucian Freud.
Is it? Oh God, I got everything out of. You're right. All right. We're leaving Nelson Shanks behind for now, and Patrick's right. This is Lucian Freud. He was the grandson of Sigmund Freud, and interesting painter. I mean, do you think he's a good painter, Patrick?
I love
Nelson.
him.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
I love Freud.
Yeah.
One of
It
my
took me a while to like him actually, but Lucian Freud is someone I hope you'll all look up. He did paint the Queen, and he was the grandson of Sigmund Freud, and he shared a studio with Francis Bacon for a while, another great English painter. And here he is painting this portrait, as you can see. And it looks like they're in somebody's basement, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Royal Palace, does it have a basement? It must have. And she's sitting there. Now, how long did she sit there? I don't know, because I don't think she sat there while he painted all those diamonds in her crown.
Probably not.
But she sat for some of it. It's a pretty. Does anybody like the painting or as a portrait
Not
or as a
really.
painting? What?
Not really.
Anyone else?
I do. I like the big, bold brushstrokes.
I like that. Yeah. Does
I
it
like
look
the diamonds.
the what?
The diamonds.
Yeah.
They
Um,
look photographic.
It looks what?
The diamonds look photographic.
They do look a lot more.
The face and hair does not, but the diamonds do, which is kind of one of the reasons I don't like it, because it's uneven in that respect.
Does it look like she has a 5 o'clock shadow?
It looks like her face is puffy.
Yeah. I think it ages her, although I like the bold brush strokes, but the actual painting ages the queen. It's
But it
not
looks
one
like
of
she
your
has
better.
a mustache, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't think she
Lucian
would
Freud, Lucian Freud is a great painter, and now we're going to look at this
Oh yeah.
that made a big splash in the media. King Charles by Jonathan Yeo. Does anybody like this portrait?
Nope.
I like the face.
Yeah. I think the face and the figure are done well. It's just they really went wild with the red and the pink.
Who is that, Andra?
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. It's still, even we talked about this on Thursday about the face. It just looks like a commercial portrait painting.
Oh, yeah.
I know we can't compare everybody to Rembrandt, but if you just go back and think about the introspection of that, and I'm sure I can't believe he sat for it for very long anyway. So it's going to be done from photographs. And this that weird, the whole thing's weird. And of course, it's all about Satanism, right? Because some enterprising journalist somewhere took a photograph and flipped it, so put the two images together. Can you see? Is it Beelzebub, or one of the demons of hell? Can you see it?
Like right in the center, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. And the monarch butterfly, of course, has a number of associations, but one is has something to do with Satanism. And then there's another one where they turned it upside down and did the same thing, and you get a different devil in that one. So does anybody believe that that was intentional?
Oh,
No.
Charles, I'm wondering if it has something to do with a process that he went through to do the background, where he may have painted the background first and half of it, and then somehow he wanted it symmetric, so he somehow like flipped it 180 and duplicated it on the other half. It just almost seems like a process issue. Not that it's an issue, but just
Yeah. Well, that could be.
like maybe he was going for some kind of symmetry in the background
Mhm.
because everything lines up perfectly. Assuming
it would
whoever
probably not be
This is the finished
weird.
painting, though.
you know
You
what?
don't
You know what
get
that tempts me to do, Charles, is make a copy of that on some kind of paper you can paint on, and repaint the backdrop, repaint the background, and see what it would look like with a like a
Oh,
blue background, or something that just separates it completely, so you see the
yeah.
figure devoid of that backdrop.
Mhm.
You do that in Photoshop probably just as bit
Yeah.
better than doing it by.
Well,
Well,
now that I'm looking at it, forget what I said. The left side and the right side are not mirror images of each other.
Mhm.
So
Right.
whoever created that combined image simply inverted the image somehow.
Yeah.
And of course, you're going to have symmetry along either way you put it together, you're going to have symmetry, and it's going to create all sorts of interesting shapes.
Mhm.
But you can see the face is flipped from one, and the hands are flipped from one side to the other. So
Yeah, it's definitely flipped. Yeah.
yeah, it's flipped. Yeah, it's flipped,
Yeah.
not folded,
Yeah.
like I was thinking.
Okay, so I also am always suspicious that it was like an inside joke that they decided to do that. Okay,
Yeah, you
So
can also doctor the image too.
it's why?
I said they could always doctor the image too when it gets to this point to like bring out certain points even more.
Yeah.
Well, I watched a documentary recently about Turner and how he would insert like certain imagery in the background of his paintings, like bears and so forth. So
Oh, yeah.
anything's possible, I guess, if you're an artist, but I don't know, kind of far-fetched for me.
Yeah. Hidden. There is a lot of that in art history where there are hidden images in it. So here also now for a somewhat more normal portrait of what's her name? Catherine,
Catherine.
Duchess of Cambridge. And this I don't know how old this is now. It goes back probably 10 some years. And when it first came out, I just hated it. It's just really tight and overworked, no sense of the surface of the paint. And I think I guess she liked it. She accepted it. And the public seemed to like it. I don't know I couldn't find the name of the artist. And only a couple more here. So we couldn't do this without none other than the Queen painted or captured by Andy Warhol.
Not bad, actually.
He's a good designer, definitely a graphic designer. The color, the feeling of light coming from it. So she looks awfully young here too.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, but she looks so young.
Mm-hmm.
And truly she was.
The blocks of color are interesting. Your eye keeps going back and forth to both of those.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
you're trying to look at her, but your eyes, ping-ponging back and
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Interesting.
He was a he was not a he was a talented guy.
Interesting how the hair is kind of modeled and feels dimensional. The face is flat.
Yeah.
And I assume that was intentional. I don't know why, but
I want to mention also that at least the English royalty, they get their portrait painted a lot.
Mhm.
And I didn't even realize how much, but I'm really happy about that because England more so than America has continued the tradition of portrait painting. It's no longer really taken seriously in the art world as it once was. But the English do commission people to paint portraits, royalty and others in England. However, it's interesting also that in the United States, the strongest tradition of portrait painting that has continued is in the South. And I don't know why. Would anyone have any ideas why?
You're talking about like family portraits or
Yeah, just commissioning portraits of the family, people in the family. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, so now we didn't see this one, but we talked about it at the DIA, remember? This is the official portrait of Obama that went to the National Gallery by Kehinde Wiley. We saw the other Kehinde Wiley. Remember that great big one with the guy on the horse
oh yeah.
with the sword? Yeah.
Mhm.
So here it is again. I think they're all breaking with tradition now. So none of these portraits look anything like the Nelson Shank portraits that we looked at. Um, but it doesn't, it doesn't really have a lot of feeling, does it?
Mm.
Compared to Velasquez, let's say. And Michelle Obama had her portrait painted by Amy Sherald. Um, I actually like this better, this approach. I like this portrait better. And I don't know if you remember, we saw an Amy Sherald portrait at the DIA also when we went down there. A lot of people do not like it, but I like it better than Candy Wiley. I'm not crazy about it. And somebody have a comment?
I was just going to say to me that all her flesh tones look very flat. It's
They're
very
all like that, yeah.
almost monochromatic.
They are, yeah, and
Yeah.
that is criticized a lot. Um, and another really, I think, really interesting portrait painter is Alice Neal. I don't know if she's still living, but we looked at her a lot when I was in grad school. Patrick, Alice Neal, portrait painter Alice Neal, and this is called Black Draftee by Alice Neal. Pretty striking, I think. And only two more. But I want everyone to recognize that this painter, Robert Welbert, this is a self-portrait. He had more influence on me than anybody else that I've studied with put together.
Why is that?
Thinking about form and learning to understand pictorial space. To think abstractly, even though you're a realistic painter. Patrick, did you study with him at all? Wilbert?
No, but I had a few conversations with him and went to his studio when his studio was downtown.
Right.
And I would always try to grab his ear as much
Yeah.
as I could. I wish I could have. I just missed him actually when I was at Wayne. He would just retired at that time.
Yeah. Well, I only took one. Well, I took a couple painting classes at Wayne before I went to grad school, and that's who I took them from. They were a trimester, so I had three, and yeah, he just opened up the whole thing for me. And that's what when I talk to my students, this is always what I'm thinking about.
So since you have known him that well, can you put us into his head and explain why the portrait has a quarter of a portrait of a woman in the corner?
No, I can't explain why, but it adds an interest to the
It
painting.
does. It certainly does.
But he was a studio, what we call a studio painter, studio genre painter, sometimes often with the model in there as well. But he had a collection of things in a studio that he would paint over and over. So if unfortunately, he did not quite make the transition to the internet world, so it's hard to find a lot of his work online. There's a great painting in the DIA of his, the full length man laying on the floor, if you've seen that, inspired by Manet's Matador. He talked about Manet a lot. He talked about, this is where I first heard about Baltus from Wilbert. He did live and work in New York for a while. And he just, he got me to understand what modernism is in painting and how we can bring figuration or subject matter back to it. Okay, do you want to see the one of me or should we just skip that?
No, show it.
It's old. The painting's old.
Please.
Good.
Nice. I know this one.
That's great.
So they're good.
I like the lighting on it a lot.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I still have the sweater.
Beautiful painting.
All right.
I really like the warm tones in the shadow area. Colors.
Yeah, it is. It's the photograph hypes it up a little bit, but that's fairly close to the painting.
Okay.
Charles, when you did that, did you do it from a photograph or a mirror or
from a mirror?
From a mirror.
Yeah. I think, Andrew, I was talking to you about did I send you the link to Artboards?
Yes.
Okay, at this time I was painting on Artboards. They're a company in Brooklyn that makes oil-primed linen panels. And they're just exquisite to work on. And it does have something to do with the image that you see here, not clearly in the photo, but the way the paintbrush drags across linen, especially when it's oil primed, is something, it's not better than anything else, but it's a unique experience that I suggest you try that. Okay. That's it. So I'll see you Friday morning.
All right.
Okay.
We'll see. Some of us will see you Thursday.